is one of my favorite, and honestly, one of the most depressing reads I've ever picked up. And yeah, it actually messed me up. At first glance, it's slow paced and might not seem that exciting, but stick with it and trust me, you won't regret it. Happiness by Shuzo Oshimi isn't your typical vampire story. It's more of a what if nightmare, a really depressing one. What if becoming a vampire didn't make life better, but only miserable? Makoto Okazaki is just a normal, bullied student. Then, one night while riding his bike to return a borrowed DVD, he gets bitten by a female vampire. Sounds like a cool upgrade, right? But instead of improving his life, everything just gets worse. Sunlight drains him, food loses its taste, and the thirst never goes away. What hit me the most is how painfully real it feels. This isn't about monsters or fantasy. It's about being forced to live as something you never wanted to be, watching the people you love grow old and die while you stay young, being hunted by people who want to experiment on you, while another vampire like you is forcefully worshipped like a god. Without giving any more spoilers, let's dive into the story. The story begins at Northwest High, where our protagonist, Makoto Okazaki, is quietly sitting at his desk when suddenly someone calls out to him. It's one of the school bullies. Okazaki stands up and immediately walks over, asking what he wants. The bully orders Okazaki to buy a bunch of food for his lunch, along with food for his girl. Okazaki asks for money, but the bully says he'll give it later. With no choice, Okazaki leaves the classroom, while one of the bullied students watches silently as he walks away. Later, while Okazaki is picking up the food, that same bullied student shows up and helps him gather everything he needs. Later that night at Okazaki's house, the family is eating together when the television suddenly reports disturbing news. Early that morning in Tokyo's Nakano ward, a person was found unconscious on the street. The victim was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after. Hearing this, their mother warns their sons to be careful. Later, while doing the dishes, she hears Okazaki walking downstairs and asks where he's going, since it's already 11:30 at night. Okazaki explains he borrowed a DVD and forgot to return it, saying he won't be long. His mother offers to take him herself, but Okazaki reassures her he'll be fine. With worry written all over her face, she tells him to be careful. Moments later, while riding his bike to return the DVD, Okazaki notices something on top of a building. He wonders if it's a bird or maybe a ghost, but then he realizes it's a person. Suddenly, the figure stands up and jumps. Okazaki freezes in shock as the person, a girl, falls straight towards him. In an instant, she crashes down and pins him to the ground. As Okazaki opens his eyes, he sees sharp teeth emerging from the girl's mouth. Then, without warning, the girl bites into Okazaki's neck. Blood is violently sucked out and licked away as Okazaki feels unbearable pain. He can feel his blood being drained from his body. Eventually, the girl pulls her sharp teeth away. Clutching his wounded neck, Okazaki opens his eyes and looks at the girl who attacked him. Standing before him is a beautiful woman with pure black hair, her mouth covered in blood, wearing ragged, worn-out clothes. She appears to be about the same age as Okazaki. As Okazaki cries, the girl smiles and speaks. "Do you want to die like this or be like me?" Weakly, Okazaki responds he doesn't want to die. The girl smiles with joy, slowly stands up, wipes her mouth, and leaps high into the air, leaving Okazaki lying alone, slowly losing consciousness, still thinking he needs to return the DVD. Hours later, Okazaki opens his eyes and sees his family surrounding him. His mother is on the verge of tears, calling his name, asking if he's okay. Okazaki immediately closes his eyes and raises his hands to block the light, saying it's too bright. His mother quickly asks Okazaki's older brother to turn off the light. After the light is off, his brother asks if he's okay, but Okazaki feels weak, gasping for air, and softly says he's thirsty. Moments later, the doctor explains that Okazaki's injuries aren't serious and that he'll be discharged soon. He advises him to take it easy and return for a follow-up in a week. Okazaki's mother thanks the doctor, bowing deeply, then turns to Okazaki with relief written all over her face, saying she's glad he's all right. Before leaving, the doctor asks about the thirst Okazaki mentioned earlier. Okazaki replies he doesn't really feel thirsty anymore and feels fine. The doctor says he doesn't see anything that would cause thirst and suggests it was probably just in his head. Later that night, in his room, Okazaki slowly removes the bandage from his neck, remembering the moment he was bitten, the feeling of his blood being sucked and licked away. He remembers the woman's eyes, her question, and her smile after he said he didn't want to die. The next morning, before school, his mother tells him to be careful, take it easy, and come home early if he feels unwell. Okazaki smiles and reassures her he'll be fine, but as he leaves, his mother watches him with a worried expression. While walking and looking at the sky, Okazaki already feels exhausted, as if his energy is being drained. At school, as he removes his shoes to put them in his locker while breathing heavily, a bullied classmate asks if he's okay. Okazaki replies he's fine. The classmate says it feels unfair how bad things always happen to us. Suddenly, the bully appears, calling Okazaki's name, joking he thought he was already dead. He laughs, saying Okazaki got attacked on the road, hilarious, and asks who attacked him. Weakly, Okazaki says it was a girl. The bully bursts out laughing. Then the bully's girl appears, asking what's so funny. Yuki laughs and tells her Okazaki got attacked by a girl and sent to the hospital. A loser. As they laugh, Okazaki suddenly smells something so sweet that it freezes him. While frozen, Yuki and his girl walk away, laughing, saying they'll tell everyone. Later in class, sunlight hits Okazaki directly, making him feel even more drained. He rushes to the bathroom and washes his face, feeling sick. He thinks about going home early, but remembers his mother's worried face and decides not to, not wanting to worry her more. As he leaves the bathroom, he hears two female students talking and smells that same sweet scent. At lunchtime, Yuki calls Okazaki over. He asks what he wants. Yuki orders him to buy bread. Okazaki doesn't respond. He feels sick, his strength fading, slowly collapsing to his knees. Yuki's girl asks what he's doing, and he says he feels dizzy. Slowly, Okazaki lifts his head and sees the girl's legs. His eyes widen. The sweet scent he's been smelling is blood. The girl is startled. Yuki angrily stands up, grabbing Okazaki's clothes, demanding to know what he's doing. Still gasping, Okazaki coldly says, "Shut up." Driven purely by instinct, Okazaki punches Yuki straight in the face, right in front of the class. Yuki's nose starts bleeding. Okazaki stares at his hand in shock. Did I really just do that? Frozen, his attention goes to the blood dripping on the floor. His pupils change as the scent overwhelms him. He leans closer, tongue slowly extending, but at the last second, he forces himself to stop. He suddenly runs out as students call his name. He rushes to a faucet, drinking non-stop, gulp after gulp, but no matter how much he drinks, the thirst isn't satisfied. Quietly, he says, "No, this isn't me." The next morning, heavy rain pours down as Okazaki enters the classroom worried, while his classmates stare at him in amazement. The attention makes him feel pressured, while Yuki's girl looks down, clearly uncomfortable. One of the bullies calls Okazaki's name and throws an arm around his shoulder, acting friendly. He tells Okazaki he's not as useless as everyone thought, saying that out of everyone, Okazaki was the one who punched Yuki, and that took guts. Okazaki weakly laughs as the bully playfully punches his side, tickling him, making him laugh even harder. But at that very moment, Yuki enters the classroom with a bandage on his nose. Okazaki immediately stops laughing, remembering punching Yuki and making his nose bleed. The bully starts laughing again, trying to cover his mouth, and soon the entire class joins in. Okazaki turns towards Yuki, trying to apologize, but Yuki ignores him, silently walking past. Yuki goes straight to his desk and is about to sit when his girl greets him. Yuki looks at her irritated eyes and coldly says, "Shut it." The atmosphere becomes even more awkward. Later at lunchtime, one of Yuki's friends asks what he's doing for lunch. Yuki responds awkwardly, asking why they're asking him and saying he has nothing to do with their lunches. Then Yuki suddenly stands up, calls out to his girl, now, and tells her they're going to get a sandwich. As they leave the classroom, Now and Okazaki briefly make eye contact. After they leave, one of Okazaki's close classmates whispers to him, asking if he saw that, saying the bully went out to buy his own lunch. He laughs, calling Yuki a loser, saying karma is a bitch. The classmate leans closer to Okazaki and says it's all thanks to him, calling Okazaki his new god as he extends his hand for a handshake. But Okazaki weakly tells him that it's enough, saying he's not like that. He says none of it makes sense, that he feels like he's going crazy and that he might be sick. He remembers the moment he almost licked Yuki's blood off the floor, and the words of the girl who bit him, asking if he wanted to become like her. As those memories flood back, Okazaki clutches his neck, about to say something, when suddenly, his vision starts to wobble. The world around him feels unstable and dizziness overwhelms him. His classmate asks if he's okay. Okazaki replies that he feels a little off and says he's going to the school infirmary. His classmate offers to take him, but Okazaki raises his hand, his eyes wide and deadly, and coldly says, "Don't." His classmate freezes as Okazaki immediately leaves the room.
Walking down the hallway, Okazaki's vision wobbles even more as his thirst for blood grows stronger. He avoids people as much as possible, covering his mouth and desperately fighting the urge. That's when he realizes he needs to go somewhere with no people, somewhere completely isolated. Okazaki makes his way upstairs to a secluded area that no one usually visits. He collapses onto the floor, breathing heavily. Suddenly, a female student appears and asks if he's all right. She slowly approaches, asking if she should take him to the infirmary. Okazaki raises his hand, telling her that he's fine and to leave him alone, but she ignores him, kneels down, and gently places his arm over her shoulder, saying she'll take him to the infirmary. At that moment, Okazaki looks at her neck. His eyes widen, his pupils change. In an instant, Okazaki pins the girl to the floor. While he's on top of her, the girl remains calm and silent as Okazaki trembles, drowning in thirst and barely holding himself back. Staring at her neck only makes the thirst worse. Okazaki suddenly starts laughing as he lowers his mouth closer to her neck, opening it, ready to bite. But before he does, Okazaki weakly speaks, "Save me." Hearing this, the girl immediately hugs him and Okazaki calms down instantly. He looks at her as tears begin to fall from his eyes. Moments later, after he fully calms down, Okazaki realizes he's on top of her. Embarrassed, he immediately stands up, kneeling down and apologizing, saying he crossed a line. But the girl laughs playfully, leaving Okazaki even more shocked and confused. She asks what line he crossed, jokingly asking if it was because he was so aroused that he couldn't resist acting on it. Then she asks who he is and which class he's from. Okazaki answers that he's from Class 1, Room 3. Surprised, the girl replies that she's from Class 1, Room 1, and introduces herself as Yukiko Gosho. The next morning, while Okazaki is walking alone towards school, Gosho suddenly shows up behind him, poking him in the back and greeting him. Okazaki is startled, and he immediately brings up what happened yesterday, saying that she really helped him out. Gosho chuckles and playfully asks if Okazaki has already gotten his urges under control. Okazaki panics and tries to explain, but Gosho cuts him off, extending her arm and asking for a gift in return for helping him. However, Okazaki doesn't have anything to give her at the moment. He then says that he really wants to think about it properly before giving her something. Gosho says it's totally fine if he just treats her to a drink instead. Before leaving, she tells Okazaki that they'll meet again at lunchtime in the same place as yesterday. Okazaki quietly agrees. Later, during lunch, Okazaki hands Gosho a can of coffee as they eat together in the same secluded spot. After a moment of silence, Okazaki brings up yesterday's incident again, saying that Gosho truly saved him, that he doesn't know what might have happened if she hadn't been there, and that things could have turned out really bad. Out of nowhere, Gosho asks Okazaki if he has any siblings. Okazaki answers that he has an older brother, then asks Gosho the same question. Gosho smiles and says that Okazaki kind of reminds her of her younger brother, that both Okazaki and her younger brother are shining examples of timidity and indecisiveness. Then she explains that this is her spot, somewhere she always comes during lunch break to lose herself in the sky, since hardly anyone ever comes here. She says that when her mind feels cluttered, losing herself in the wild blue yonder helps put her at ease. She suggests that Okazaki try doing the same every now and then. Later that night inside his room, Okazaki asks himself if he's really doing all right. As he thinks, he remembers Gosho's words that he can look at the sky when his mind feels cluttered. Remembering this, Okazaki walks over to his window and starts staring up at the sky. But the night sky feels different to him than usual, almost as if he's being drawn to it. Moments later, Okazaki hops on his bicycle and his mother asks where he's going. Okazaki smiles brightly and tells her that he's just going to check something out at the rental store. With that, Okazaki starts riding his bicycle, leaving his mother behind as she calls out his name. As he rides, Okazaki feels more alive than ever, thinking about how Gosho is the first girl he's ever truly been a friend with. As he passes by a convenience store, Okazaki notices something. He sees the former bully, Yuki, being picked on by an older guy. Nearby, he also sees Nao, and the two briefly make eye contact. But the moment he sees her, Okazaki immediately looks away and continues riding forward, ignoring them. Moments later, Okazaki gets off his bike and slowly enters a rental store, still thinking about what he just saw, and decides to take another route home. After entering the store, Nao catches up to him, calling out his name. She asks if they can talk, adding that she really needs to speak to him somewhere privately, and asks him to come with her for a moment. Later, as they walk into an empty street, Okazaki asks Nao what they want to talk about. Nao becomes a little angry and says that thanks to you, Yuki has gotten really weird. Ever since you punched him, Yuki hasn't talked to me at all. She explains that Yuki's friends and upperclassmen have started making fun of him, and that the guy you saw earlier even kicked him while he did absolutely nothing to stop it. As Okazaki remembers the scene from earlier, Nao asks him to do something about it. She begs him to come with her and stop those jerks. Covering his mouth, Okazaki replies that he doesn't know how he could do anything. He says he feels bad for punching Yuki, but it wasn't something he planned to do. He adds that he has problems of his own right now and that he has no idea how to stop them. Now asks if that means he's not going to help them. Okazaki stays silent as Now begins to walk away, quietly saying, "Forget it," and apologizing. But suddenly, Okazaki calls out Nao's name. Moments later, Okazaki agrees after all, and the two begin riding their bicycles together. When they arrive back at the convenience store, they realize the group is gone. Nao guesses that they must have taken Yuki somewhere else and asks Okazaki to help her look for him. As they ride around searching, Okazaki can clearly smell the blood coming from Nao. Suddenly, Nao asks him to stop. She spots Yuki being picked up by the same guy from earlier. Seeing this, Nao grows worried and asks Okazaki what they should do. Suddenly, one of the guys starts making footwork movements like a boxer, but Yuki just stares at him. The guy asks Yuki what he's staring at, then immediately punches him in the face. Okazaki watches as blood starts pouring from Yuki's nose. The bullies laugh as they plan to hit him again. Now becomes even worrying, gripping Okazaki's arm and calling out his name. Touching the bite mark on his neck, Okazaki remembers the words of the girl who bit him as he tells himself that he's not like her. As Yuki continues to be beaten, Okazaki steps forward. The bullies look at him and ask what he wants. With a nervous voice, Okazaki asks if they could stop, politely begging them to please stop treating Yuki like that. The bullies burst out laughing. One of them slowly approaches Okazaki and kicks him hard in the stomach. Then he slowly walks away, telling Okazaki to get lost. Okazaki kneels on the ground, coughing and breathing heavily. Suddenly, his vision starts to wobble, just like before. His eyes sharpen as he looks at Yuki being beaten. In that moment, Okazaki leaps towards the group of bullies, crashing into their leader and slamming him to the ground. Okazaki breathes heavily, his eyes wide open and deadly. The leader kicks Okazaki away, completely terrified by him. As he slowly stands up, he asks Okazaki who he is, then suddenly turns to his friends and tells them to just go home, leaving Okazaki and Yuki behind. At that moment, Nao rushes towards them, calling out Yuki's name. She asks if he's alright, then turns to Okazaki and asks him how he's doing. But suddenly, Yuki silently walks away without saying a single word, leaving Nao and Okazaki behind. Okazaki looks down for a moment. Then Yuki suddenly comes back, places a can of coffee in front of Okazaki, and turns around, leaving once again without saying a word.
The next morning, at the same usual meeting place where Okazaki and Gosho eat their lunches, Gosho suddenly asks Okazaki if he's free today. She then asks him if he wants to go out somewhere. Okazaki is surprised and asks where they're going, but Gosho answers honestly, saying she doesn't really know, she just thought it'd be nice to hit the town. Before Okazaki can fully respond, Gosho immediately points at him and says they'll meet in front of the school gate after classes end. Okazaki quietly agrees. Later, after school ends, Okazaki's already waiting in front of the school gate. As he waits, he starts thinking and blushing, realizing that this feels just like a date. His heart starts pounding loudly as he gets nervous, wondering what he's supposed to do. Suddenly, someone calls out his name, startling him. It's Yuki and Nao. Yuki casually asks Okazaki if he's free and invites him to go have some fun. Okazaki apologizes, saying he already has plans. At that moment, Gosho appears as Okazaki starts calling out her name. Nao asks who she is, wondering if she's Okazaki's friend. Okazaki answers yes, introducing her as Gosho-san from Class 1. Nao happily introduces herself and Yuki, saying it's nice to meet her. Gosho shyly bows her head in greeting. Okazaki immediately explains that he promised Gosho they would go out. Yuki cheerfully suggests that all four of them go together, saying it'll be fun. Okazaki looks at Gosho and asks what she thinks. Gosho replies that it's fine by her. If Okazaki's okay with it, then she is too. Moments later, they start playing bowling. Okazaki turns to Gosho and asks if she's really okay with it. Gosho replies coldly, saying it's fine. After Yuki finishes his turn, he asks Gosho to go next. A moment later, as Gosho silently holds the bowling ball, Nao asks if something's wrong. Gosho answers honestly, saying she's never bowled before. Nao is surprised and immediately starts teaching Gosho how to bowl properly. But suddenly, Gosho bends down on her knees and gently slides the ball forward. It goes straight into the gutter and hits nothing. Nao and Yuki burst out laughing, and Okazaki joins in without thinking. Hearing his laughter, Gosho turns toward Okazaki, embarrassed. Once again, Nao approaches Gosho, trying to teach her the right way to bowl. Meanwhile, Yuki brings up the incident from last night, saying Okazaki looked like he was flying and asks how he did it. Okazaki answers honestly, saying he really doesn't know. Suddenly, Yuki thanks Okazaki, which surprises him. Okazaki then starts apologizing to Yuki for punching him. Yuki looks at Okazaki, throws an arm around his shoulder, and starts smiling brightly.
Meanwhile, at a manga store, Okazaki's bullied classmate is browsing through manga. Suddenly, the guy from last night appears and asks if he's a first year at Hokusei High, then asks if he knows a guy named Makoto Okazaki. Days pass and Yuki and Okazaki become friendly with each other. They casually chat in a classroom, confusing their classmates. As they talk, Now appears and they greet each other with good morning. Now asks Yuki if she can come over today. Yuki asks what for, but Now answers that it's because she wants to, insisting and asking what the big deal is. Then Yuki turns to Okazaki and asks him to come along too. Okazaki hesitates, asking if he wouldn't be in their way. Yuki says he won't and Now reluctantly agrees. But Okazaki notices his bullied friend from before, looking down as he quietly sits at his desk. Later, Okazaki goes to Gosho's classroom. Gosho asks what it is. Okazaki replies that it's nothing, he was just walking by and thought he'd say hi. He then adds that he's heading to Yuki's house today and asks if she wants to come along. Gosho coldly replies that she's good for today and won't be coming. Okazaki starts apologizing, saying he made her bowl with them last week. Gosho shyly answers that it was okay and that she actually had more fun than she expected. Nearby, Gosho's classmates are surprised to hear her talking, wondering who she could be speaking with. Seeing this, Okazaki's surprised and starts to leave, but Gosho calls out to him and thanks him for coming by. Later that night, Okazaki, Yuki, and Now finally arrive at Yuki's house. Okazaki is amazed by how huge it is. After entering, Yuki calls out asking if anyone's home. Yuki's mom appears and asks who he's with, wondering if they're his friends. Okazaki immediately bows and greets Yuki's mom, but Yuki ignores her and tells Okazaki to follow him. Yuki's mom says she wants them out by dinner, but Yuki Ruby tells her to shut up and go to hell. Okazaki quietly follows them upstairs. Inside Yuki's room, Now sits down while Yuki tells Okazaki he can sit anywhere he wants. Yuki grabs a drink from the fridge and asks Okazaki if he wants some booze. Okazaki politely declines, so Yuki hands him a soda instead. Later, while they're having fun, Okazaki asks about the gang at the park, wondering if Yuki was cool with those guys. Yuki smiles and says they haven't texted or messaged him at all, saying they're probably scared of Okazaki. Okazaki asks how Yuki even knew them. Yuki explains that when he started middle school, they invited him into a small group. They hung out every day, but they were total pricks. He says he'd been trying to get away from them for a while, and thanks to Okazaki, he finally shook them off. Yuki then stands up, grabs a watch, and gives it to Okazaki as a gift for what he did. Okazaki says he doesn't need anything like that, but Yuki insists and places it into Okazaki's hand. Okazaki says he can't just take it, but Yuki tells him not to worry, that it's how he feels. Now then starts acting clingy, asking Yuki to get her something too. Yuki asks if she's drunk, but now becomes even more touchy, leaning closer to him as they lie down on the couch. Seeing this, Okazaki immediately says it's getting late and that he should head home. Before leaving, he thanks Yuki for the watch. Yuki smiles and waves goodbye. Later, as Okazaki walks home, his phone suddenly starts ringing. He looks at it. It's Nuta, his bullied friend. Okazaki answers and asks what's going on. Nuta asks if they can meet right now. Moments later, as Okazaki arrived at the meeting location, Okazaki saw Nuta as he approached him. Okazaki asks what they wanted to talk about, but Nuta suddenly apologizes. At that moment, the gang from the park appears. In an instant, Nuta turns around and starts running away, leaving Okazaki behind. Then, the gang leader tells Okazaki that he's coming with them. Meanwhile, back at Yuki's room, Yuki and Now are having a great time together when Yuki's phone suddenly starts ringing. Yuki picks it up and sees that it's Okazaki calling. Yuki answers and asks Okazaki if he forgot something, but on the other end of the call, the gang leader speaks instead, saying they're busy beating up Okazaki at the usual spot. He orders Yuki to come over, saying he wants him to join them. Suddenly, the gang leader kicks Okazaki straight in the face. The leader starts yelling, saying he's not letting Yuki off and tells him to get his ass over there. Okazaki lies on the ground, his hands tied behind his back. His vision once again becomes unstable as his heart starts throbbing violently. The gang begins beating Okazaki again, repeatedly kicking him while he's on the ground. Tears stream down Okazaki's face as he suddenly jumps up and charges straight at the gang leader, slamming his head directly into the leader's face. The leader's lip starts bleeding. Enraged, he begins kicking Okazaki even harder. As Okazaki is being kicked, blood from the gang leader's mouth splatters, and some of it lands inside Okazaki's mouth. The moment he tastes the blood, Okazaki's body freezes. His vision becomes even more unstable as his body begins to tremble. Slowly, sharp vampire fangs start emerging from Okazaki's teeth. The gang leader raises his leg, ready to stomp on Okazaki again, but Okazaki suddenly bites into the gang leader's shoe with his sharp fangs. Seeing this, the gang leader immediately backs off as his shoe is torn apart. Okazaki looks at them, his vision still wobbling, and begs them to just go away. Suddenly, his heart starts pounding even harder as he cries out loudly in terror. That loud cry awakens someone. Hearing the sound of Okazaki's heartbeat and screams, a figure turns toward the location, while Okazaki's body begins to twitching and then goes completely still. The gang leader slowly approaches Okazaki, asking what's wrong with him and why he's suddenly gone quiet. One of the gang members asks what they should do with Okazaki. Then one of them notices something and points ahead, saying they've got company. They all turn toward the figure, wondering if it's a cop. The gang leader yells, demanding to know who it is, ordering it to come out. The figure slowly approaches, twitching its neck from side to side. The three men begin sweating nervously. What they see is a high school-looking boy wearing worn-out clothes covered in bloodstains, and without them realizing it yet, he is a vampire. The male vampire looks at Okazaki, smiles, and asks if he was the one who called for him just now. The three guys are confused. They think the vampire is talking to them. One of them nervously asks who is he, saying that this situation doesn't look good. Then, the male vampire looks back at Okazaki and points at the gang, asking if he isn't feeding on them and whether he plans to share. Okazaki can't respond, but the male vampire casually says not to mind him if he does. Before the gang leader can even finish his sentence, the male vampire suddenly jumps at one of the gang members, slamming him to the ground and biting into his neck. The male vampire turns around, locks eyes with his next target, and immediately jumps again, leaving the gang leader frozen in place. When Okazaki looks around, all three of them have already been bitten. His vision isn't clear, but he can hear the sounds of sucking and slurping. Moments later, the male vampire lets out a satisfied burp, saying he's full. Suddenly, the male vampire starts grabbing one of the victims by the neck, saying that it's time to clean up. Okazaki immediately shouts at him to stop. The male vampire looks at Okazaki and asks why, saying that if he feeds on them, he has to dispose of them. That's just how it works. The male vampire slowly approaches Okazaki and asks if he's new. Okazaki can't answer, breathing heavily as the male vampire leans closer and whispers that maybe he should dispose of you too. The male vampire grabs Okazaki by the neck. Okazaki starts losing consciousness, struggling to breathe. Suddenly, Yuki appears and smashes the male vampire in the head with a hollow block, sending him crashing to the ground. Yuki shouts Okazaki's name, asking if he can get up. Okazaki weakly tells Yuki to run, to get out of there, but Yuki ignores the warning. He helps Okazaki up, supporting him as they slowly start to leave. Suddenly, the male vampire lunges forward and bites Yuki on the neck, catching him completely off guard. Yuki's blood starts pouring violently, and some of it lands in Okazaki's mouth. Instinctively, Okazaki gulps it down. After tasting Yuki's blood, Okazaki's body begins to feel light. The male vampire looks at Okazaki and asks, "How does it taste?"
5 days later, while Gosho sat at her desk with her head resting on the table, she overheard her classmates talking. They were saying that Yuki was missing, along with the three guys from the park. They also said that Okazaki was the only one who had been found, covered in blood, and that he was currently hospitalized. As Gosho remained at her desk, someone appeared in front of her. It was Now. Now greeted her, saying it was nice to see her again, and asked if they could talk for a bit. Moments later, at the usual place where Gosho and Okazaki ate their lunch, Now asked Gosho if Okazaki had contacted her. Gosho replied that she hadn't received any texts, calls, or messages. She said she had gone to Okazaki's house many times, but nobody was home, and she had no idea which hospital he had been admitted to. Now replied that she didn't know either. Gosho then asked what had happened that day. Now explained that the three of them had been hanging out together, but Okazaki went home first. Later, they received a call from Yuki's old senpai. When Gosho asked about the senpai, Now explained that he was a thug Yuki used to hang out with, the same one who is now missing. She said Yuki had been bullied by them before and that Okazaki had rescued him. Now guessed that they must have ambushed Okazaki somewhere. She said they called and claimed they were roughing Okazaki up, ordering Yuki to come over. Yuki rushed out immediately to rescue him. Now said she called 119, but by the time help arrived, Yuki was already gone. Now began crying as she said Yuki had been missing for 5 days. She said she had been searching for him the entire time, going everywhere Yuki usually went. As Now cried, Gosho approached her and gently hugged her to comfort her. Suddenly, Nao's phone dinged. She immediately grabbed it and checked the message.
It was from Okazaki. The text read, Hakigami Hospital, room 605. Leader, at the hospital, they stood in front of room 605. They knocked on the door and slowly opened it. Inside, they saw Okazaki lying on the hospital bed with his mother sitting beside him. Okazaki's mother asked if they were his friends and apologized, saying she didn't think Okazaki could see anyone at the moment. But Okazaki said it was all right and gently asked his mother if she could leave them alone for a little while. She agreed and said she would be in the waiting room before leaving the room. Once she was gone, now asked Okazaki if he was okay and what had happened. Then she urgently asked where Yuki was and if he was safe. Okazaki answered that Yuki had to be alive and that he was going to search for him. He swore that he would find him. Now demanded to know what he was talking about and told him to explain everything. But Okazaki warned her, saying that whatever she did, she should never try to look for Yuki herself. She told her not to go into any dark or deserted areas. Before Now could say another word, Gosho stepped closer to Okazaki, leaning in and telling him that she wanted him to tell her everything. As they locked eyes, Okazaki spoke. He said he couldn't go back to school anymore. He said he could no longer return to his normal life and that he could no longer expose himself to sunlight. Okazaki coldly said his goodbye to them. He thanked them for coming by and begged them to leave. But Gosho swore to him that she would come back tomorrow and the day after that as well. She pleaded with him to wait for her. Later that night, as Okazaki lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he remembered Yuki being bitten, his blood splattering and falling into his mouth as he swallowed it. Upon tasting Yuki's blood, Okazaki realized it was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted in his life. Then he remembered the male vampire's words, saying that they were the same now, that they were exactly the same. Trying to clear his mind, Okazaki went to his window and looked up at the night sky. Suddenly, the male vampire appeared outside his window, telling him to come with him and saying he would be happy to kill him. Okazaki started running, but the male vampire grabbed him and threw him out of the window. As Okazaki fell, his body felt lighter than ever, and he landed smoothly on top of an electric pole. Okazaki was shocked as he stood there. The male vampire spoke, saying Okazaki was already doing just fine. Nervously, Okazaki asked where Yuki was and what he had done to all of them. The male vampire told him to not worry. He said he had disposed of all of them. He explained that he heard police sirens approaching, so he hauled all the bodies onto the roof of a nearby building and disposed of them there. He said he even tossed the bodies into a rooftop water tank. He added that he wanted to dispose of Okazaki, but he ran out of time. Tears streamed down Okazaki's eyes as he said the vampire was lying, but the male vampire continued, saying to not worry, that he would make sure to dispose of Okazaki next. With that, the male vampire grabbed Okazaki by the leg and leapt high into the air. Moments later, the vampire landed smoothly on top of an overhead line gantry, holding Okazaki upside down by his legs. The male vampire said a train would be arriving soon, and that Okazaki could still die if it hit him. He said Okazaki wasn't quite at that level yet. As Okazaki cried, the male vampire asked for his name. He then introduced himself as Saku, saying he had been alive for a very long time. He said he was jealous of Okazaki because Okazaki could still die. As the train finally approached, Saku said his farewell. But just as the train was about to hit him, Okazaki shouted that he didn't want to die. He remembered Gosho's words, how she promised she would be back tomorrow and the day after that as well. As Okazaki closed his eyes and nearly accepted his fate, a female vampire suddenly appeared. She grabbed Okazaki and kicked Saku off the overhead line gantry. When Okazaki opened his eyes again, he saw the same female vampire who had bitten him and turned him into a vampire. On the train tracks, Saku spoke as his body was torn apart. He called the female vampire by her name, Nora, asking her why, saying it hurt so badly and asking how she could do this to him. Suddenly, Nora called out Okazaki's name and began licking his lips. She slowly stood up, then leapt high into the air once again, leaving Okazaki behind. Meanwhile, inside a rooftop water tank, Yuki was still alive. Weakly, he called out Okazaki's name. At the scene, as Okazaki lay on the ground, two police officers arrived. Hearing their voices, Okazaki slowly stood up and leapt onto a nearby rooftop. Standing on top of the building, he looked down at his hands and noticed Saku's severed head. He remembered what Saku had said earlier, that he had hauled all the bodies onto the roof of a nearby building and tossed them into a rooftop water tank. Realizing this, Okazaki immediately thought of Yuki and said that he had to go and look for him. His body felt lighter than ever as he leapt across nearby rooftops. Moments later, he landed on a building close to where the incident had happened. From there, he looked around at the rooftop water tanks, wondering which one Saku had thrown the body into. Then, he smelled something, the scent of blood. Following the trail, Okazaki climbed onto one of the water tanks and slowly opened it. Inside, he saw Yuki, still alive. Yuki weakly called out Okazaki's name. Seeing him, Okazaki immediately climbed down into the tank and grabbed Yuki, pulling him out of the water. On the rooftop, Okazaki looked at Yuki, who managed to form a faint smile. Yuki said he was glad Okazaki was okay. He apologized for dragging him into his mess with the gang, and then thanked him. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Okazaki's mother and two nurses were searching for him. A nurse said Okazaki was nowhere to be found and asked if they should contact the police. Okazaki's mother said Okazaki must be extremely distraught, then began crying. She blamed herself, saying it was her fault that if only she had tried to understand his feelings a little bit more. She apologized, saying it must have been so hard for Okazaki. As she cried, she noticed something. It was Okazaki walking towards the hospital with Yuki on his back. The next morning, the news began playing while Okazaki's parents were being questioned by a detective. The report said that early that morning, all four missing high schoolers were discovered inside a water tank on top of a building in Tokyo. According to police, 3 of the students were confirmed dead, while the 4th was hospitalized in fair condition. Authorities believed that a person or persons had killed the youths and left their bodies in the tank, and that the investigation was still ongoing. Meanwhile, Okazaki lay in his hospital room with the lights turned off. Nao and Gosho entered and immediately rushed to him, asking if it was really true that Yuki was alive. Okazaki replied that it was, saying he was across the hall from his room. Upon hearing that, Nao burst into tears of relief and ran to Yuki's room, leaving Gosho and Okazaki behind. Okazaki called out Gosho's name. As she turned around, Okazaki slowly raised his head and gently smiled at her. Suddenly, Nao heard Yuki shouting for Nao, asking what was wrong, and screaming for help. Hearing this, Okazaki rushed to Yuki's room. Inside, Yuki's body arched backward as he drooled and said he was thirsty. He breathed heavily, clutching his neck and calling for his mother, repeating that he was so thirsty. Moments later, when Yuki opened his eyes, he found his arms and legs tied to the hospital bed. Standing beside him was Okazaki. Okazaki said the hospital was going to discharge him because he had escaped earlier. He apologized, saying he couldn't stay with him. Yuki tried to say something, but his words wouldn't come out properly. Okazaki shook him, calling his name. At that moment, Yuki's mother entered the room and demanded to know what Okazaki was doing. She coldly told Yuki to get himself, saying that struggling like that wouldn't help him. She said she had brought him some clothes and told him to inform the nurse. Yuki's mother then looked at Okazaki and asked if he needed anything, adding that she would appreciate it if he left. Later, back in Okazaki's room, he was lost in thought, remembering Nora calling his name and licking his lips. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was his older brother, saying he had a visitor. It was Gosho. Moments later, Gosho asked Okazaki how he was feeling. Okazaki replied that he was fine. Gosho then asked what had happened, how he figured out where Yuki was, what happened to both of them, and who killed the thugs. She asked him to tell her everything. Okazaki remained silent as Gosho called out to him again. He finally apologized, saying he didn't want to be a burden to her. Gosho asked how he could possibly be a burden. Okazaki said he would be fine and told her to focus on Yuki and Nao instead. For the first time, Gosho raised her voice, loudly asking how he could be a burden. Then she calmed down and gently pleaded with him to tell her. Okazaki lay back on his bed and said that telling her wouldn't fix anything. He said it was something for the police to handle and that it had nothing to do with her. Gosho replied that of course it did. Okazaki yelled back, asking how, what could it possibly have to do with her? Gosho began crying and said it was because Okazaki reminded her of her little brother. She said her brother died 5 years ago after getting sick and she couldn't do anything for him. That was why this mattered to her now. Seeing her cry, Okazaki slowly raised his head and began to speak. He said there was a girl who sucked his blood. Gosho asked who it was. Okazaki said her name was Nora. He said she attacked him late at night and that he might have caught whatever she had. The hospital examined him and said it was just a mental issue, but he said he was constantly thirsty. No matter what he did, he wanted blood. He continued saying that when Yuki's friends were beating him up, a man showed up, attacked them, and drank their blood. Yuki came to save him, and that man, Saku, bit Yuki as well. He said Saku killed the 3 thugs, but Yuki was the only survivor. He added that the only reason he could find Yuki was because he followed the scent of blood, and that for some reason he could fly now, too. Gosho asked if he was joking. Okazaki said it sounded like a joke and that the police reacted the same way when he told them. But then he added that when Yuki was bitten, he just stood there and drank Yuki's blood. As he cried, he said it was delicious. Okazaki needed to find Nora, that he had to see her again because she knew something. He added that Nora knew his name and called him by it. Okazaki began repeatedly calling out Nora's name, asking if she was watching him. At that moment, Gosho rushed forward and gently hugged him tightly. She thanked him for telling her everything and said he would be all right, that she was going to cure him. As Okazaki was about to hug Gosho back, he stopped himself and clenched his hand. Later, after Gosho leaves, Okazaki lies down on his bed. Suddenly, he hears Nora's voice calling out to him. Okazaki looks toward his window. Slowly, he follows the voice, stepping out of his room and leaping high, almost as if he's flying. He follows Nora's voice while calling out his name himself. That's when Okazaki arrives and finds Nora on top of a house roof. Nora looks at him and smiles gently. Nora then stands up and asks Okazaki to come over. She leaps forward and Okazaki follows. Moments later, they arrive at an abandoned building. Okazaki follows Nora up to the rooftop where he sees her enter a small structure on top of the roof. Okazaki follows her inside and sees Nora sitting on top of a pile of dolls. Nora says this is where she sleeps, then asks Okazaki to sit down. Okazaki sits down and immediately asks Nora what she is. Nora looks at Okazaki with a sorrowful expression. She apologizes for making him like her, saying she just couldn't bring herself to kill him. Okazaki asks why it had to be him. He begs Nora to make him normal again and to fix Yuki, but Nora replies that she can't fix it, that it'll be that way forever. Nora slowly leans forward and gently holds Okazaki's face. She asks him to run away with her, saying things are getting dangerous and that she can't stay here any longer. She explains that she has to go somewhere else again. She adds that staying in the human world will only bring Okazaki pain and asks him to come to her instead. She says they can survive together and split the blood between them. Okazaki asks what she's talking about, saying it sounds crazy. He starts crying, saying he has a family and friends. He begs Nora to return his life to normal and fix him. Suddenly, Okazaki's heart starts pounding loudly. He feels thirsty again. His vision becomes unstable and he collapses onto the ground. Nora asks if he's thirsty, saying after all the blood he drank last time, his thirst must be even worse now. She says she drank some blood a while ago and that it's still in her stomach, asks if Okazaki wants some. Okazaki doesn't respond. Nora says it's all right, explaining that this is how they share. Nora leans closer, holding Okazaki's face. She opens her mouth and blood begins to flow out. Seeing this, Okazaki immediately shuts his lips tight, but Nora leans even closer, pressing her mouth to his and transferring the blood from her mouth into Okazaki's. Okazaki starts gulping it down. After finishing, Nora looks at Okazaki and asks if it was good. Realizing that he just drank blood again, Okazaki suddenly swings his arm at Nora and starts running away. The next morning, Okazaki steps out of his room. His mother sees him and happily asks if he's okay. Okazaki smiles faintly and says he's fine, asks if he can have some breakfast. His mother prepares breakfast and serves it to him. His parents and brother watch as he starts eating, but Okazaki suddenly spits the food out. It doesn't taste like food anymore. He starts apologizing through tears and asks if it's okay for him to stay home. With tears in her eyes, his mother says of course it's fine. She asks why he's apologizing, saying he hasn't done a single thing wrong. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Yuki's mother enters his room saying she came to visit him. What she sees next makes her freeze. Yuki's fangs are growing from his teeth as he growls in thirst. A flashback plays from the past when Yuki was younger, sitting alone at a playground. Then someone calls out to him. It's his mother. Yuki asks what's going on, wondering if he isn't going out and asking if she's angry at him. His mother starts apologizing, saying she must have made him feel lonely. She hugs Yuki tightly and promises she'll always be there for him. Yuki looks at her and asks if she really means it. She says she does and tells him that she loves him. Yuki replies that he loves her too. But now, without Yuki even realizing it, he's already bitten into his mother's neck, drinking her blood.
The next day, while Okazaki is lying in his bed, he slowly stands up and walks over to the window, gazing up at the sky. As he looks out, Nora's words echo in his mind, asking him to come with her, and he remembers the moment she shared her blood with him. Lost in thought, Okazaki touches his lips, quietly wondering what would happen to him if he really did leave everything behind and go away with Nora. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing. It's Gosho. The moment he sees her name, Okazaki immediately answers. Gosho speaks right away, her voice shaken. She tells him it's about Yuki. She says she's at the hospital with Nao, but Yuki isn't in his room anymore. She adds that she heard from one of the nurses that Yuki's mother was found dead inside Yuki's hospital room. There are police everywhere, and no one can find Yuki. Okazaki freezes. Before Gosho can say anything else, the doorbell suddenly starts ringing violently. Okazaki turns toward his bedroom door just as several men force their way into the house. His mother desperately tries to stop them, demanding to know what's going on. One of the men coldly tells Okazaki to come with them for a bit, saying it's fine, that they just want to talk to him for a moment. Okazaki's mother immediately steps in between them, blocking their path. She demands to know why they're taking her son away, insisting they can talk to him right there. She says Okazaki isn't in any condition to go outside. The man offers a brief apology and says he can't go into details, only that they need to ask Okazaki some questions and require their cooperation. Still, Okazaki's mother refuses to back down. She demands to know where they're taking him. The man tells her not to worry, that they are only going to talk to Okazaki and will contact her later. At that moment, Okazaki's mother spreads her arms wide, blocking them completely. She raises her voice, saying none of this makes sense and demanding to speak to their supervisor. The man suddenly glances at his subordinate and gives a silent signal. In an instant, the subordinate steps forward and forcefully pulls Okazaki's mother away from him. At the same time, the man presses a cloth over Okazaki's mouth, subduing him. Okazaki's mother cries out his name as he's dragged away. One of the men warns the others to be careful and not let Okazaki bite them. Hearing that, Okazaki realizes it. They know. They know about him and his secret. As he's taken outside, Okazaki struggles, calling for help, while his mother starts crying in fear for her son. Outside, a pickup van is already waiting. Just as the men are about to throw Okazaki inside the van, a large rock suddenly comes crashing down, striking one of the men in the head and knocking him to the ground. Okazaki looks up. Falling from the roof of the house is Yuki. Yuki lands hard and immediately kicks another man straight in the head. In that brief moment, Yuki shouts at Okazaki, telling him to jump. Without hesitation, both of them leap high into the air. The remaining men stare in shock as Okazaki and Yuki escape, vanishing from sight. Later, as Okazaki lies down, breathing heavily, Yuki speaks up. He says that he heard Okazaki calling out for help. Yuki looks at him and says that this time, he finally saved Okazaki for real. As Okazaki looks at Yuki, he asks if he drank blood. Yuki answers yes. Then he starts laughing, saying that by the time he realized what was happening, he was already clamped on to his mother's neck. He says all the pain he felt suddenly lifted, like a curtain being pulled away. Yuki laughs even louder, saying it felt like he drank gallons of blood. He says that now his mother is dead and that he killed his own mother. Yuki keeps laughing, louder and louder, saying it served her right. Then he asks Okazaki if he saw him flying, just like him. He says he couldn't believe how light his body felt. Yuki points up at the sky and says it was the prettiest thing he's ever seen. As Yuki laughs, Okazaki calls out to him. Then Yuki asks Okazaki what he's supposed to do now. He says he has nothing left, that he can't go back home anymore. Slowly, Yuki raises his head and looks at Okazaki, begging him not to leave him. Desperately, he says they need to run as far away as they can. But Okazaki replies that he can't do that. He says he can't run away from any of this. Yuki insists, saying that they have to run. Then Yuki asks Okazaki why he's looking at him like that, asking if they're friends. Before Okazaki can answer, Yuki continues, saying that Okazaki is just like him, that Okazaki drinks somebody's blood too, just like he did. Yuki goes on, asking Okazaki if he really wants to get caught by those people, saying who knows what they do to him. Yuki says the only thing they can do now is run.
Moments later, Okazaki and Yuki begin leaping from building to building until they arrive at an abandoned building where Nora lives. Yuki turns to Okazaki and asks if he really thinks Nora is going to help them. Okazaki replies that everything will be fine, reassuring Yuki that he's sure Nora will help them. As they step inside the building, Nora is nowhere to be seen. Okazaki starts calling out her name. When he looks up, he sees Nora sitting above them. Nora jumps down, landing softly. Yuki looks at her with pure wonder. As Nora looks at Okazaki, Okazaki speaks and introduces Yuki, saying he's his friend. Nora replies that she already knows. She says she was watching the whole time. Yuki then asks Nora who she is and how she knows Okazaki. Nora begins approaching Yuki, leaning in closer as she starts sniffing him. After sniffing him, Nora looks at Yuki with cold eyes. Yuki asks what she's doing, saying they need to get out of there. They need to go somewhere no one will ever find them. He says he came here because Okazaki told her she could help them. But Nora doesn't reply. She just keeps staring at Yuki coldly. Suddenly, Nora kicks Yuki in the face, sending him flying across the room. Yuki crashes to the ground, and Nora immediately jumps and slams her knees into his stomach, then begins punching his face. Nora keeps punching Yuki as Okazaki watches in shock. At that moment, Okazaki yells at Nora to stop. She immediately stops and slowly stands up. Nora says that Yuki has a deep black scent to him, and that if Okazaki stays with him, he'll be doomed. Then, once again, Nora asks Okazaki to go with her. Yuki slowly stands up, breathing heavily, swearing that he will kill Nora. Then Yuki suddenly turns around and says the word "Mom." As Nora turns toward him, Yuki immediately leaps forward with his mouth wide open, fangs drawn. Nora instantly jumps backward, avoiding his attack, but Yuki keeps charging. He grabs Nora's legs, bites down, and tears into the flesh of her leg. Yuki pins Nora to the ground, lunging forward with his mouth wide open to bite her. Just as Nora is about to be bitten, Okazaki steps in, saving her. Yuki's fangs sink into Okazaki's arm instead. Yu tells Yuki to stop, saying he needs to go back to being the friend who saved his life. Yuki looks at Okazaki as tears begin to fall from Okazaki's eyes. Slowly, Yuki pulls his fangs out of Okazaki's arm and angrily says, "Don't give me that shit. What do you know?" With that, Yuki leaps outside, leaving Okazaki and Nora behind. After Yuki leaves, Nora begins licking Okazaki's bitten arm. After a moment, Okazaki tells her that it's enough. As Okazaki cries, he looks at Nora's wounded leg and remembers Yuki's harsh words from earlier. He says he needs to go, that he needs to find Yuki. Nora tries to stop him. Okazaki looks at Nora and asks her to let him go. Then Nora speaks, saying that she's forgotten everything from when she was human. She says she's killed more people than she can count, men, women, children, and the elderly. She drank their blood and killed them. People are born and die endlessly, scenes constantly changing around her, and she's witnessed it all alone for so long. Everything about her human life is now far, far gone. But after she attacked Okazaki and drank his blood, and after she looked at his face, she smiled. She said she remembered her life back when she was still human. Nora gently holds Okazaki's face and kisses him. Okazaki begins hugging her as well. Meanwhile, that night, as Nao walks toward their house, she hears rustling in the bushes. When she looks, she sees Yuki there, calling for help. Moments later, Nal enters the house. As she walks inside, her father asks her where she's been, but she ignores him. Her mother tells her to apologize to her father, but Nal loudly tells them to leave her alone, saying it's none of their business. After entering her room, Nal locks the door and immediately goes to the window, calling out to Yuki. Yuki appears outside and slowly climbs into her room through the window. As Yuki lies down on Nal's bed, she asks her if he's okay and what happened. Suddenly, Yuki turns toward her, baring his fangs, his vision unstable. In that moment, Yuki pins Nal to the bed and moves in for a bite. But as Nal closes her eyes, Yuki suddenly kisses her instead. Soon after, they begin doing it, Yuki crying as it happens. Meanwhile, Nora and Okazaki hold hands as they sleep together. And at the Gosho window, she stands alone, calling out Okazaki's name. The next morning at school, Gosho is texting Now, but Now isn't responding.
Worried, she decides to call her instead. Now immediately answers the phone and Gosho instantly asks if she's okay, saying she never replied to her messages. Now answers that she's fine. Gosho asks where she is, wondering if she's at home. Now replies that she is home, saying she doesn't feel too good and thinks she might have caught a cold or something. Gosho immediately asks if Now is really sure she's okay. She adds that there's something strange about everything that's been happening, that Yuki's mother died, there was a huge scene surrounding it, but it's not showing up on the news at all. Gosho says it feels like everything is being covered up. Breathing heavily, Now apologizes and says she's starting to feel a little sick and needs to hang up. Gosho replies that it's all right and says she'll look for Okazaki and Yuki herself. She tells Now to get well soon. Now thanks her and hangs up the phone. Inside Nao's room, while they're doing it, Yuki tells Nao not to tell anyone that he's in her room. Nao promises that she won't. Meanwhile, Okazaki opens his eyes and sees Nora beside him, their hands still intertwined. As Okazaki slowly raises his head to sit up, he notices Nora clenching her teeth, clearly in pain from the wound on her leg. Okazaki weakly calls out Nora's name, and Nora slowly opens her eyes. Okazaki asks if her leg hurts, but Nora slowly stands up, smiles, and says she's fine. She tells Okazaki that they need to get going. As Okazaki looks at Nora's hand reaching out to him, Okazaki says that if they're going to go together, he has one condition. He asks Nora not to kill any more humans, saying that if she used to be human, then she needs to try to return to that side again. Hearing this, Nora smiles brightly and cheerfully agrees, saying she'll try her best. Later that night, after class, Gosho goes to the crime scene where the incident involving Yuki and Okazaki took place. As she walks around the area, she notices the bloodstains left on the ground. She bends down to look closer, but suddenly, someone appears behind her. Startled, Gosho quickly turns around. A man is standing there, asking her what she's doing at a place like this. Before Gosho can nervously answer, the man speaks again and asks if she knows about them, about vampires. Gosho is shocked. She asks the man who he is. The man smiles, realizing that Gosho knows something. He introduces himself, saying his name is Sakudane, and asks if she'd like to talk somewhere else, maybe over dinner or something. Later, at a nearby restaurant, Sakudane thanks Gosho for coming along with someone as sketchy-looking as him. He introduces himself again, saying his full name is Masami Sakudane and that he's 25 years old. Gosho introduces herself as well. Gosho immediately asks what Sakudane meant by vampires and what his definition of them is. Sakudane replies that he spent his entire life trying to figure that out. He says he calls them vampires because it's the easiest term for people to understand. He explains that there have been cases dating far back into the past, cases where victims were found lying in the streets with wounds on their necks, like animal bites, and that these cases were always left unsolved. He adds that the place where they met earlier was one of those attack sites. Sakudane asks Gosho if she knew about that, and Gosho immediately answers yes. Sakudane continues, explaining that the attack involved vampires somehow, but that this time 2 people survived. He explains that he went to the scene to investigate, and that's when he noticed Gosho there. He then asks her why she was at the crime scene. After a brief silence, Gosho asks Sakudane if there's any way to cure them, if someone can go back to normal after becoming a vampire. Sakudane answers quietly, saying that if there were a way, then maybe he could have saved his sister. Hearing that, Gosho is surprised. Sakudane continues, saying he lost his sister when he was 9 years old. One night, he woke up and saw his little sister being bitten by a female vampire who left after drinking her blood. Somehow, his sister survived the attack, but after that night, she began acting strangely. She says she became afraid of the light, locking herself in completely dark rooms. She writhed in pain, constantly complaining about how thirsty she was. Sakudane begins to cry, saying he wishes he could have taken her place. He says no one believed him when he told him what attacked his sister. They all thought he was just a child, making things up for attention. Sakudane insists that it was real. He begs Gosho, saying that if she knows anything about vampires, she has to tell him. Gosho hesitates, keeping her mouth shut, but then she finally speaks, saying she wants to help her friends. She explains that her friends said someone named Nora drank his blood, and that's how he became like her. He says he's constantly thirsty and wants to drink blood.
Sakudane asks Gosho where her friend is right now. Gosho answers that she doesn't know. She says they were told he was kidnapped by some kind of secret organization. Gosho starts crying, saying she has no idea what she's supposed to do anymore. Suddenly, Sakudane smiles and tells Gosho that they should search together. Hearing that, Gosho looks at him, feeling like she's finally found someone who can help her. Sakudane adds that if he can uncover what vampires truly are, he swears he'll do anything to help her. He says he doesn't want Gosho's friend to end up like his sister. Sakudane then extends his hand, asking Gosho to trust him and let him help. Gosho takes Sakudane's hand and the two shake hands, while Sakudane smiles brightly. Meanwhile, outside Nao's room, her mother knocks on the door, telling her that it's time for dinner and that her father is calling for her to come out. Nao replies coldly, telling her mother to just leave the food outside the door and that she'll eat in her room. Her mother asks if she's all right, wondering if she still has a fever. She gently asks Nao to open the door just a little, but Nao rudely tells her mother to leave her alone. That's when her drunk father arrives. From outside the room, he shouts at Nao, demanding that she open the door and come out for dinner. Nao shouts back, telling him to go away. Hearing that, his father becomes furious and starts kicking the door, yelling at her and asking what she's doing locked up inside her room. Nao screams back at him to stop. Then, with a violent kick, Nao's father forces the door open. What he sees makes him freeze. Nao tells her parents to get out of her room, but her father, enraged, charges forward and punches Yuki immediately. He begins kicking Yuki repeatedly as Nao desperately tries to stop him. Her father shoves Nao aside, yelling at her to get out of the way, saying he's going to kill Yuki. Yuki's vision becomes unstable once again. Nao's father shouts at him, threatening to hunt him down wherever he goes. At that moment, Yuki suddenly lunges forward and bites into Nao's father's neck. Nao sits frozen in shock. Nao's mother also stands completely still, unable to process what she's seeing as Yuki bites into Nao's father at the table. Tears stream down her father's face as Yuki's fangs sink deeper into his neck. Yuki then raises his head, flesh hanging from his mouth. Yuki turns his blood-covered gaze towards Nao's mother. She stands there unable to move or scream. Then Yuki leaps at her as well, biting into her neck and drinking her blood. Nao remains seated, watching helplessly as she hears the sickening sounds of her mother's blood being sucked and flesh torn from her neck. Yuki finally turns and looks at Nao. Without hesitation, he attacks her too, pinning her to the floor, his mouth wide open and his fangs drawn. But Nao doesn't resist. She isn't afraid at all. Yuki begins crying, his face still covered in Nao's parents' blood. Through his tears, Nao gently asks him if it hurts. Nao wraps her arms around Yuki, hugging him softly as they lie on the floor. Nao calls out Yuki's name again and again. Meanwhile, at Akazaki's house, Akazaki's mother wakes up and slowly sits up in bed. As she thinks about her son, she suddenly hears a knock at the window. Startled, she quickly goes over and pulls the curtains aside. There, standing outside, is Akazaki. Her mother cries out his name as tears immediately streamed out her face. She asks him if he's all right and what happened to his arm. Akazaki tells her that he needs to go. Confused, her mother asks what he's talking about and begs him to come inside. She says he must be cold and that she needs to wrap his wounded arm. Akazaki apologizes, saying he doesn't think he should be there. Her mother breaks down, saying that if he weren't there, she doesn't know what she would do. She swears that they'll protect him, promising that everything will be all right. She begs him to come inside. Akazaki steps back. He thanks his mother and apologizes one last time. Then he leaps high into the air, disappearing into the night, leaving his mother behind as she desperately calls out his name. Back in Nao's room, Yuki slowly comes back to his senses. He looks around and sees Nao's parents lying dead on the floor. Then he looks in front of him. Nao is lying there, lifeless, tears still streaming down her face. Yuki approaches her and gently touches her face, only then to realize that Nao is no longer alive. Yuki starts embracing her tightly as he cries out in unbearable pain, screaming at the top of his lungs.
Coming through.